Thanks for joining us. I'm Robert Holden. Years after a controversial raid on a culture camp at Artillery Lake, the chief of Lutsel K'e Dene First Nation says the NWT Premier's apology isn't enough. Chief James Marlowe is responding to a statement released Tuesday by the territorial government. In it, Premier R.J. Simpson says he's sorry for what he calls a difficult and upsetting experience for many in the community. The First Nation has been calling for an apology for years after what it describes as a forceful invasion of a camp on Artillery Lake. Marlowe says the apology doesn't go far enough and should have been delivered face-to-face.
Again, I say that I felt disrespected and believe that what happened in terms of the apology is not sincere, is not good enough. He has to go to the community and apologize directly to the people that were affected.
CBC News reached out to the territorial government asking for interviews with Premier R.J. Simpson and Environment Minister Jay McDonald, but a spokesperson says they are not available, adding the Premier has already addressed the issue publicly and responded directly to Chief Marlowe, and there's nothing further to share at this time. We need to correct a detail from yesterday. We said an incident involving the Lutsel K'e Dene First Nation at a camp on Artillery Lake happened in 2020. The correct year is 2022. Another member of Parliament has crossed the floor to join the Liberals. Marilyn Gladu has left the Conservative Party, saying her decision will benefit constituents in her Ontario riding. The Liberals are now technically just one seat away from a majority. Ashley Burke has more.
Yet another hastily called announcement, Prime Minister Mark Carney introducing the latest addition to his growing Liberal family.
We couldn't be happier to have this expertise, experience and energy coming to our team.
Southwestern Ontario MP Marilyn Gladu, a longtime Conservative, defecting to the Liberals team.
He's invited me to bring my experience, my talents, and my views into the large Liberal tent.
Some of those views at odds with the Liberals. Gladu opposed legalizing cannabis.
With drug-impaired driving and challenges there, the doubling of traffic deaths, and Liberals don't care.
Retracted comments questioning the seriousness of COVID-19 and need for vaccine mandates. And when she ran to lead the Conservatives, said she'd allow private members' bills to restrict abortion.
Look, we are interested in unity, not uniformity. And if you really want to unite the country, you want people with lots of different views.
This is the fifth MP to cross the floor since the fall. Laurie Idlout joining from the NDP, and now 4 Conservatives, including Gladu.
This is another blow to Pierre Poilievre.
Pollster David Coletto says it raises questions about his leadership.
Not just how he appeals to the country and to Canadians, but how he's handled his own caucus. He lost a senior staffer this week as well, and so it is that question that keeps coming up is, can he work well with others?
Poilievre online accusing Carney of seizing a costly Liberal majority that voters denied him, and doing so through backroom deals. The Bloc Québécois using it to try and pick up a seat in Monday's by-election in Quebec.
The Liberals have this majority that the people of Terrebonne and the people of Quebec should, could, and might choose to have a stronger voice that will speak only for themselves.
There are 3 by-elections on Monday that include 2 seats considered safe for the Liberals. If they win one of those seats, technically they'll secure a majority government. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
In the Yukon legislature today, the spotlight shifted away from cabinet. Backbench MLAs from the governing body brought forward their own ideas for debate. TJ Deere has a look at what came up.
One of the motions debated today relates to the RCMP spying on Indigenous Canadians from the 1960s to the 1980s. Porter Creek North MLA Doris Anderson's motion calls on the Yukon RCMP to issue a public apology to Yukon First Nations and release all related files. The motion was passed unanimously by MLAs in the House today. Yukon Justice Minister Laura Lang also said that the government would be writing to the Federal Justice Minister and the Commissioner of the RCMP, illustrating the impact impact the revelations have had here in the Yukon. Another motion debated today urged the government to plan another new subdivision with the city of Whitehorse. The motion was amended by the Liberals to include the input of the Kwanlan Dun First Nation and the Ta'anquachan Council. This motion was also unanimously passed by MLAs in the House. The third motion asked YG to get the input of Yukoners on a potential federal social media ban for youth under the age of 16. The idea mimics a similar ban that was recently implemented in Australia. Yukon MLAs unanimously passed that motion as well. Now, non-government motions are non-binding, meaning that the government doesn't have to follow through on them. TJ Deere, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Yukon MLAs have voted in favor of potentially adding contingency funding to territorial operating budgets. Yukon Premier Curry Dixon says many outside provinces have started adding contingency funds to their budgets. Contingency funds are for unforeseen costs such as public emergencies or natural disasters. The Yukon government's latest budget includes a $100 million contingency fund. Dixon said this is a change in approach. He says the goal is to avoid adding more spending later in the fiscal year through supplementary budgets. A key decision is coming for the Dawson Regional Land Use Plan, which will guide how about 10% of Yukon is managed. The Quechin First Nation and territorial government are now reviewing the final plan and will decide whether to accept, reject, or modify it before it takes effect. Chris McIntyre has more.
The plan is a requirement under Chapter 11 of the Quechin Final Agreement. It divides a nearly 40,000 square kilometer region into 22 land management units, each with its own specific recommendations about activity or development allowed. Some are outlined as conservation zones, while others could see future developments such as mining operations or tourism. The Quechin and territorial government will consult with affected communities, including White River and Nachonaik Dun First Nations. The Commission says the latest version of the plan is more balanced. It says the final draft has a much clearer definition of what co-management means and is very much based in communities' traditional and cultural values. Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
The city of Yellowknife is taking a closer look at how it defines itself as it tries to attract more people to live and stay in the north. A new rebranding effort is aiming to capture what the capital stands for at a time of economic and social change. CBC's Sarah St. Pierre has more.
What comes to people's minds when they think about Yellowknife? What would make them move here and stay? Here's what some Yellowknifers think.
Diamonds, gold, northern lights.
I've been here 47 years this year. Summers are incredible. You can't beat the summers, even better than the Okanagan.
They'll come for the adventure and they'll come maybe for the money, or they'll come because they're trying to escape something, but they'll stay because the people here are lovely.
Well, the city is trying to answer those same questions right now. It's trying to narrow down a brand for the city, the story that it tells about itself. City staff presented a new branding direction to councillors today. At the center of it, a pitch. Yellowknife is a place to settle for people who don't like to settle. A city where you can build a life on your own terms. Councillors were broadly supportive, but said the story needs to go deeper. They want it to better reflect Indigenous perspectives and the reality of people who choose to stay, even when life here is hard.
Yeah, it was really good feedback that we got today from council, and we'll definitely take that back and work with our consultant to weave it more into the master story. I really see it being it could be included throughout many of the parts of the master story, from like living here and the land remembers. And so I don't know exactly today how that'll be reflected, but definitely it was important feedback.
The rebrand comes at a turning point. Yellowknife's identity has long been tied to diamonds, but with mines winding down and new federal defense investments on the horizon, the city is rethinking what comes next.
Things are changing in Yellowknife in terms of what's going on in the community from an economic perspective, from a reconciliation perspective, from a community development perspective. You know, the city's looking to get more land so that we can get more housing developed, which would increase our population. So it's about making sure that we're showing the best of Yellowknife, as the presentation noted today, the honest part of Yellowknife too.
For now, the plan isn't set in stone. City staff will take into consideration some of the feedback they heard today and make some changes. From there, they'll figure out how to roll out the new messaging and how to best tell the story of the city to prospective residents. Sarah St. Pierre, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Heating issues at an elder's home in Kuujjuarapik, Nunavik may soon force residents out, raising concerns about where they'll go next. The Ungava Tulatavik Health Center runs the Tuusayipik home. They say 13 residents live in the home, several with high care needs. Health Center Executive Director Larry Watts says any move would be precautionary, but the building is decades old and in need of major repairs.
The home wasn't originally intended for hospital care, nor for elders from other communities. However, due to circumstances over time and lack of infrastructure, the UTHC maintains these services.
Watt could not provide a timeline for the move or when the repairs will begin. He says individual assessments are underway to tailor relocation plans for each resident. That could include moves within Nunavik or to southern Quebec. Those relocated south would receive support for family travel to visit. Former MLA and mayor of Igloolik, Nunavut, Louis Tapardjuk, has died. He represented the constituency of Amituk during the 2nd and 3rd legislative assemblies. He was a lifelong advocate for Inuit rights and language. Liberal MP Lori Idlaut knew Tapardjuk. She says he was an active community member and helped create an elder society in Igloolik.
He had such a tremendous impact on Nunavut. I remember growing up parts in Igloolik, and he was always supporting elders and making sure that elders' knowledge was being collected. And I remember him just caring so much about making sure that we don't lose our culture.
Idlaut says her thoughts and prayers are with the family. Tapardjuk was 73 years old. The legal representative for Inuit under the Nunavut Agreement says they haven't heard back yet from the federal government after asking for more time on the firearms ban amnesty. Nunavut Tungavik Inc., or NTI, is calling for a 5-year extension to the current amnesty under Bill C-21. The bill bans more than 2,500 types of firearms. The organization says the timeline does not reflect the realities in Nunavut, where certain rifles are widely used for hunting and safety on the land. Paul Erngout is the president of NTI.
It's a concern for us, and that's why I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. But we haven't really heard from the federal officials yet.
As the federal government moves ahead with its buyback program, NTI says extending the amnesty would allow time to find solutions that respect Inuit harvesting rights, safety, and food security. The amnesty is set to expire October 30th, 2026. After that, possession of a prohibited firearm could result in criminal charges. Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated also says money for voting in its elections will now be a permanent fixture. Along with that is new criteria for where to spend that cash. But as Samuel Watt reports, not everybody is on board.
Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated's Chief Executive Officer Kilivaka Bluna says money for voting in the elections is here to stay.
Voting is a societal good, and we do want people to get into the habit of voting.
The Land Claims organisation ran a pilot in 2024. Nunavut Inuit beneficiaries who voted got a $100 voucher.
And voter rates increased to 66%, and that's something that we'd like to see continue.
Last time, most vouchers were redeemed at local Northern and Co-op grocery stores. This time round, NTI is asking businesses to apply if they fit a new criteria. They have to be an Inuit registered firm that would exclude northern stores, but they also must have a physical presence like a store or office in Nunavut. That's where Tapardjuk Fotheringham takes issue. The president of the Kivalliq Chamber of Commerce says that requirement excludes many Inuit businesses which operate online.
It should be up to the people. It should be up to the Inuit to decide where they would like to spend that voucher.
Kabluna says there are several reasons behind that rule, one being that NTI wants to keep the benefits in Nunavut.
There's a lot of people who don't have credit cards, and so those people wouldn't be able to shop online.
There were roughly 23,000 eligible voters in 2024. That would equate to roughly $2 million in vouchers if every person voted. K'e Dene says the money will come from resource revenues from development on Inuit-owned lands, and she's confident the program will be fiscally sustainable. The by-election for president is set for May 27. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Yellowknife.
School boards in the NWT say they're being forced to cut programs after a wave of funding rejections under Jordan's principle. The federal government is meant to ensure First Nations children have access to health, education, and social services, and has funded cultural programming as well as mental health and trauma support in schools. But boards say recent changes are now impacting what they can offer.
We all feel in disbelief as to like the way they've gone about denying these applications. It feels irresponsible. It feels like there was just no foresight or forethought as to how this is going to impact all of these students and areas.
School boards are now looking to the territorial government's $30 million funding package to help fill the gap, but it's not clear yet how that money will be distributed. The war in the Middle East has been driving up the cost of fuel in Canada, and that in turn is impacting grocery prices. Experts are warning that even with a ceasefire, consumers should brace for higher costs. Nisha Patel has more on what to expect.
Everything's going up 50 cents to $1 a pound.
The fuel crisis from the Middle East war is driving food prices higher, starting with imported produce and some meat and dairy.
The fresh stuff is where you're going to see the immediate impact.
At Winnipeg grocery store Food Fair owner Munther Zaid says shippers and suppliers are adding fuel surcharges, forcing him to pass those costs on.
This, a couple of weeks ago, we had it on for 75 cents for a 2-pound bag of onions. We just got a shipment in. We had to raise it to $1.
It's becoming more expensive for trucking companies to transport goods, with the price of diesel jumping 40% since the war began. That's rippling through the food supply chain to grocers.
We're now at the point where we can't hold off any longer, and what consumers are seeing at the fuel pump is what the grocers are seeing at their back doors.
And shoppers in rural and remote communities will feel the squeeze even more.
We should anticipate that there's going to be an increase in food inflation in the months ahead. You just have to be transparent and honest about that. There's just no magic bullet that can erase that from happening.
Though experts say with Canada's growing season around the corner, buying local seasonal produce could provide a buffer for grocery budgets.
As we get into the spring, our fresh fruits and vegetables aren't coming from as far away, and so the freight impact will not be as profound.
After years of soaring food bills, shoppers are preparing for yet another financial hit.
I am a little more cautious of what I'm buying.
Well, I'm going to double down on my meal planning and prepping, so just making sure that I'm using everything I buy.
It could take months for energy markets to stabilize. Until then, consumers and the economy will pay the price. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
The Yukon Child and Youth Advocate's Office has tabled its review of the government's sexual orientation and gender identity, or SOGI, policy. The in-depth report includes data analysis, focus groups, interviews, and online surveys. The findings show SOGI policy is not effectively being put into practice in most Yukon schools.
There's a bit of training already happening. We want it to be more fulsome, and that all educators have access to that training, and that schools know who's trained, and then that young people have input on who the safe people are in their schools. So there's school wellness specialists right now in schools, and this policy suggests that there should be safe persons in every school. So that we want the young people to help identify who those people are, and that training becomes more broad. We're also looking for accountability. So when there are issues of discrimination or any of the challenges, that they don't turn into, public scandals. It's more like address it. Let's figure out what's going on here, and that there's an accountability measure to addressing issues as they arise.
The Child and Youth Advocate asked the Yukon government to respond to the report's findings by the end of June. Cases of a rare but dangerous infection are growing in Canada. Invasive meningococcal disease can cause serious complications, including meningitis. Lauren Pelly now with more on the outbreak and why the disease can be challenging to fight.
I just thought maybe she had a headache.
Sandy Hilmerson says her 11-year-old daughter was first diagnosed with an ear infection in April 2024. Then symptoms like a rising fever and vomiting quickly got worse.
She wasn't even coherent.
It turned out Leah had bacterial meningitis, a dangerous inflammation of the membranes around the brain. While rare, similar infections are on the rise in Canada, and in Leah's case, she spent more than a week in hospital.
We are grateful that they were able to recognize what was going on.
Meningitis is often caused by invasive meningococcal disease. Data compiled by CBC News shows the bacterial infection hit a record low during the pandemic, then started rising again to at least 155 countrywide infections in 2025. The bulk of those cases appeared in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec, marking Canada's highest tally in more than a decade.
If somebody says you should get your meningococcal vaccine, then you should probably get it.
These infections only turn dangerous when a common type of bacteria enters the bloodstream, leading to conditions like meningitis, sepsis, and organ failure. Vaccines help prevent serious illness, but
one vaccine doesn't cover everything.
Different provinces take different vaccination approaches. In Manitoba, an ongoing outbreak is driven by an unexpected strain.
The serotype W was one that we had not seen a lot of before, so we changed our routine vaccine program a couple years ago in relation to that.
Still, countrywide vaccine uptake has dropped in recent years.
It's very worrisome that our coverage rates have changed.
While this illness remains rare, its impacts are severe. The death rate for invasive meningococcal disease can be as high as 14%, and infants and young adults are among those most at risk. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Parking lots, right-hand turn lanes, and main roads too. Potholes are once again all over the city of Whitehorse as the snow melts. Along with the general discomfort of driving through the rough terrain on the daily, many residents are worried about the damage it could bring to their vehicles or others.
Everywhere I am, I'm keeping my eyes open because it can change from day to day. I mean, it's that time of year and the road base is what it is.
Get worried because the tires bang really hard. Sometimes your rim can bend, or you can get a flat tire from it.
Somebody might get accident on it, so I just hope the government will do something about that.
City workers are currently shifted day and night to fill the potholes across the city. The city of Whitehorse says when the ground thaws, potholes can develop within hours. Residents can help crew locate and repair the holes quickly by calling the 24-hour Maintenance Control Center. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. We leave you tonight with a little look at spring from up the Ingram Trail here in the Northwest Territories. Thanks for watching. I'm Robert Holden.